Teachers and their unions, students, politicians, parents, school boards, and trustees all say they are the guardians of Ontario's public education system. Joining us now to tell us why they hold students' best interests at heart, Anne Hawkins, president of the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association. Janet Ecker, Ontario Minister of Education from 1999 through 2002. Marit Stiles, Toronto District School Board trustee. Doretta Wilson, Executive Director for the Society for Quality Education, and Chloe Kameni, President of the Ontario Student Trustees Association. And it's great to have you five with us here at TVO, day one of our 10th season. I want to start by playing a clip of somebody you all know. This is Sam Hammond, who is the head of ETFO, the elementary teachers, who may have a small dispute happening right now with the Ontario government. We'll play the clip and then come back and chat. Roll it, please.
The 78,000 members of ETFO have always and will continue to stand up for our past, our future, our members of the past, the teaching profession, and the future of student learning conditions in this province.
Janet Ecker, get us started here. Everybody thinks they speak for the education system. You're a former Minister of Education. Who does, in your view?
Well, that's a really, really good question because everybody does have a role. But I think ultimately the Minister of Education, the provincial government, is responsible for the overall funding for the system, is responsible for the overall policy within the system. And that is the minister who gets elected by the voters who are parents and taxpayers, because it's not just people who have children in the school, but it's also the people who pay for the school system. So I think overall, it's certainly your Minister of Education, but there's obviously different levels of responsibility and accountability within that throughout the system.
One of those levels of accountability is at the trustee level. Who do you think speaks for the system?
Well, I guess somewhat similarly, I think everybody, to some extent. You know, it takes a village. I think the same applies in education. It's parents and students and teachers, and it's also government, and the provincial government in this case, you know, it controls the purse strings. But trustees and school boards play a very unique role because we are the connect to the local communities. And I think that's a very important role. And we are also elected officials. So we actually are elected by people who have opinions about education. And it's up to us to help implement a lot of the policies that are brought forward by the provincial government.
Doretta, the teachers of this province think they are the guardians of the education system because nobody gets it like somebody who's in the classroom every day. Fair?
Well, no, I would. Well, they obviously play an important role, and every stakeholder in education plays an important role. But I think ultimately the people that think they speak for education are the people that control the money in education, because it is always about money in the end.
Even when they say it's not about the money?
Even when they say it's not, it always is. And we would say that parents, who are really the consumers of education until their children, students, reach a level of maturity, should have a little bit more say and control over what happens to that funding.
I'm leaving the two rookies for the end here. Anne, hard to believe, you're the head of the OECTA Teachers Union, and you've never been on this program before, so We're happy to welcome you here.
Thank you.
Okay, who do you think basically speaks for education in Ontario?
Well, I think the other ladies have already spoken about the fact that the purse string holder, government, ultimately, and the policies that come out from there. I do believe trustees and parents have a role to play. Ultimately, at the end of the day, teacher in the classroom is the one who has to deliver the curriculum and put the policies into place. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody should be working together for the benefit of the most important people in this whole thing, and that's the students in the classroom.
Let's go to one of them, shall we? Chloe.
Yes.
You're 17 years old.
I am.
Welcome to television. This is your debut. Okay, you've seen all the different perspectives here.
Yeah.
Where are you coming from?
I definitely have to agree with the ladies here. I think it's the government that speaks for it and the people who have the biggest platform and the resources. But in my opinion, I believe that it should be the students, because I think that of education as like a store. We're the customers, we're the consumers, we're the ones who every day we go to school, and we are the ones who are affected by everything that goes on in Parliament Hill and the policies that come out and what the government decides. So I think that in the end we should have the biggest voice, because there's 2.2 million of us and there's only one Minister of Education. So in my opinion, it's not a fair play of balance, and I think that it's in the game of education, we are the biggest population, but we're a minority.
They should have the biggest voice, students, Doretta?
Well, the parent is the consumer until the student is old enough to, that's what I was trying to imply. So
But one of the things that, because I think Chloe makes a really excellent point, one of the reasons why our government put student trustees on school boards and then helped those trustees form the Association of Trustees was because we felt that the voice of students needed a stronger vehicle, that it was getting lost in all, in the disputes and the change and the reform that was happening, that we needed to make sure that students had a foothold, if you will, in that debate.
And did that really happen, or was it more cosmetic?
Oh no, I think it did. I mean, I think trustees on school boards, and Meredith can talk about it. I mean, they have a role. It's delineated. It's in the law. The association was formed and is sort of part of the official stakeholder list, if you will, for the Ministry of Education, because that voice is important to have as part of the policy formation.
Well, let's see how serious that is. When you are the student trustee at trustee meetings, do you get the sense that people take what you say seriously?
I'm part of Halton Catholic, so I think that our board does a really great job of listening to us and taking us seriously as people and as people at the table. But I've heard other stories from other trustees that they kind of have a different experience and they're still viewed as students. But in my opinion, I think that if the government really wanted us to have a strong voice, they'd give us a binding vote. Because as of right now, we have a non-binding vote.
You can't vote,
right? We can't vote, so we can't. Although we're here to speak on students, we can't really make that an action. We can't really say that we don't agree with it by voting or not voting. So I think if the government right now really wants to take that extra step and give students the voice that we're supposed to be given, they would give us these binding votes.
How about that, Doretta? You want to give students the right to vote on trustees?
But they're not elected by the public at large.
That's
so
true.
I think that's going to be a very controversial debate if that happens.
And there are legal obligations in terms of trustees and that, but I think that was one of the, because that was a big issue when I put it in place, that we debated that, and that was part of the problem, was there are legal reasons that you don't want to have students caught up in that. But what some boards do, and I think Chloe's right, some boards take it more seriously than others, but what some boards did is they would actually include that student vote for whatever it was as part of their deliberations. They tried to make it as serious as they possibly could.
Okay,
Yes.
Mara, let me find out from you. How do you not, as somebody who's been in and around politics and education for many, many years, when a 17-year-old gets up to speak at a trustees meeting, how do you not say, that's very interesting, dear, but now those of us who actually know what we're talking about are going to go on?
Well, you got to meet some of these student trustees. Chloe's amazing, and I think she is in keeping with my experience with student trustees, which was these are extremely engaged young adults, very engaged in the issues. They're listening to fellow students. They appreciate the role of the teachers and everybody in the education system. They're extremely well informed, and they have a very crucial role to play. So actually, I find in our school board, and I don't know what they say, we've had some difficult times at the TDSB, but I find that the school student trustees, when they speak, everybody really listens, because it is our one window into what the student experience and perspective is.
Do you think, Doretta, that parents have an adequate say over what happens in education today in Ontario?
Well, to a certain extent they do. They get to choose what neighborhood they live in, what school they're going to send their children to. Beyond that, they don't really have a lot. The school advisory councils were well-intended, but I think they lost a lot of their sizzle. I think they lost a lot of their intended control to monitor what's going on.
Not influential?
No, they're not that influential. They ended up, in many cases, I'm sure there's exceptions to this, but in many cases ended up reverting to the old style PTA fundraising body, even though they're in law and regulation, it says their main function is to monitor student achievement in the school. And I don't see a lot of that happening.
Why not?
Because there's no accountability. There really is no accountability. If, first of all, parent councils are just purely advisory, so they have no control over who the principal is, who the staff is, what gets taught at that school. Everything, of course, is mandated from the ministry on down. But they don't. There isn't any consequence in accountability if things don't improve at that school. If the student achievement isn't improving, if there's nothing that happens no incentive to do that, then nothing happens. There's no consequence. There's no accountability.
And let me go to you on this, because as we try to better understand who's sort of responsible for making sure that our students are well educated, of course, at the end of the day, it gets back to the teacher. Should it? Are you ultimately responsible, you as teachers, for making sure that our children are well educated?
We're the ones who are the gatekeepers of what goes on in education delivery in the classrooms in Ontario.
But are you ultimately responsible?
Ultimately responsible for delivering the curriculum that's passed down to us. The unfortunate part is recently we've had so many initiatives and so many things happen, and there's been a lot of stresses within the education system that has become increasingly difficult with the workload. We've been asked to do way more with a lot less, and it's becoming very difficult in the classroom. And I go to what Chloe said. The communication between the student and the teacher in the classroom, and also the trustees and the student governments within each school, is critically important in finding out how the students react to the things that are going on in the school and the new delivery of new curriculum, so that we can then inform our practice and change so that students get the education they need and they deserve.
I know the Minister of Education is fond of saying, and I forget the number, but it's something probably like $26 billion a year. We're spending, is it 26, something like that?
I think it's about 22.7.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Still, that's a lot of money.
It is.
That's a lot of money. So when you say we're being asked to do more with less,
Well,
$22 billion and change sounds like a lot of money.
Well, if you look at the funding, there's problems there, and this goes back to former governments. And the reality was some of the changes that were made to the system. We're struggling with, the government's struggling with the funding formula, let's be honest. When it gets to the school boards, what gets down to the classroom is what is really concerning me. Funding has to be more targeted to classroom needs and classroom management and delivery of program, rather than management level at the top level.
Mart, who is ultimately responsible for making sure our children get a good education?
Well, I do think that ultimately the provincial government, who controls where the funding goes and what the curriculum is and how everything is structured, is ultimately responsible. That's what elections are for. Elections are change agents. That's where democracy comes in. And the public, who ultimately are the impetus behind our education system, they can make decisions about who's in charge and making those decisions at the top. I would say I do agree with a lot of the other panelists that we've seen changes over many years here in this province that have kind of chipped away at funding for education. And even when you talk about things like parent involvement and school advisory councils, that kind of thing, and the fact that they're so focused on fundraising, why is that? It's because we're not properly funding many aspects of our education system, things that matter to families, to communities, to kids, and how they learn. I mean, if you've got, and I totally agree that we have to put the money into the classroom and what's happening there in the education. But if you've got a leak over your head while you're trying to learn, it makes it really challenging. And I think that a lot of school councils and parents are becoming very active and involved in the advocacy, which I think is important, unfortunately, because we've just seen systemic underfunding of our education system now. And I think the current.
How far?
Oh, well, I mean, I think we've had, probably could go way back. I'm sure we've never adequately funded education, but we certainly, under this government, have seen an unwillingness to change the education funding formula, which everybody will tell you has been the problem for a long time.
There's tons of money in the system, but is it adequately being put into the classroom?
Well, I've been involved in the education debate at different levels for, I guess, maybe, oh my God, 20 years. And you know what? There has never been a day when a school board chair or a union leader stood up and said to the Minister of Education, thank you, we have enough. And I think that, are there funding pressures? Of course there are funding pressures. There have always been funding pressures. There always will be funding pressures. And until we start to shift the debate into what's the student outcome we want and how do we get there? Because just throwing more money at it, I mean, the current government has thrown a lot of money at the education system, gazillions more, quite literally, and there's fewer students.
Not literally.
Literally, gazillions. No. Anyway, that's a technical term, Steve.
Billions, literally.
Yeah, billions. Yes, there are funding pressures, and yes, there are questions about where the money goes and what you use it for, et cetera. But this cannot continue to be just a debate about gimme, more money. There's got to be more about how it's used. And the funding formula was designed, and again, I can't speak to its current format, but it was originally designed to be transparent for taxpayers and parents and teachers and everybody about here's where the money goes. It was to give the provincial government the levers to put more money where there was need. So, for example, school boards that had long distances, more buses would get the money for that. School boards that had more need needs in terms of their population, let's say, socioeconomic needs or whatever, could get more money for that. So that was the principles behind it. And it also was to show and track and drive money to the classroom so that you were dealing with what kids needed in a classroom, what teachers needed in a classroom, so that you had that. So that was the original intent of it, and I think is still the right policy for how you want to fund education.
Doretta, how do you resolve the conundrum of people wanting adequate amount of money spent on their children's education? They don't want to be in schools where there are leaks in the ceiling and the kids obviously have these distractions and can't learn. But they don't want their taxes going through the roof either. They want it all. How do you resolve all that?
Well, you can't really have it all because there are always going to be those pressures, as Janet said. There's always going to be demands and it's never going to be enough. But you can manage it better. You maybe can find new ways of delivering education.
Whose job is that?
That ultimately it's the legislator's job, because you'll need a framework, a legislative framework, to allow some of those mechanisms to be in place. And you may need outside of the box thinking, I hate to use that cliche, but different ways of delivering education that we have not seen that are actually growing. For example, online learning. There are 2 private high school online suppliers of education credit, and this has become a huge growth area. Online learning is probably the biggest growth in education, and I don't think educators they can't imagine what's coming because of this. I mean, I'm thinking of things like TED Talks, right down to getting your English credit online through online learning. Now the province does supply some of those, but there are other suppliers that are coming in to fulfill a need.
I am just imagining how the head of the Catholic Teachers Association would feel about the Minister of Education going to her and saying, you know what, we don't actually need 5,000 of your members right now because we're going to do more online instruction.
Exactly, and I have to, I'm glad you raised the topic. Education International World Congress this year was in Ottawa in July. One of the biggest concerns worldwide is the protection of publicly funded public education and the privatization, the commodification of the classroom. And it's become a huge concern. We've got private companies, and you know there are dozens of them, and they're called edu-businesses. They're running a conference in Toronto fairly soon, who have taken the reins and the control of education out of the public domain and turned it into public, turned it into profit.
But here's the thing, Anne, it really depends how you frame this debate. It is potentially either a debate about innovating in education, or it is either a debate about hanging on to teacher positions.
Okay.
Which is it?
There's 2 pieces to this. So it's about the privatization, about the protection of a publicly funded, accessible education. Education and e-learning is actually well entrenched within the school board systems. We deliver a lot of education through e-learning, remotely or because there aren't enough students taking a particular course. So we're well aware that it's out there, and we're more than willing to get to the point where we know that. But yes, it is going to be about teachers' jobs. The bottom line is, we don't want education being delivered by people who are not qualified educators.
Okay, Janet, you want to help me out here? Because at some point, teachers want money because they need jobs, and people who make educational products want money because they believe in capitalism. How do we get these two sides speaking to each other?
First of all, 2 points. One, what are you trying to do with the education system? And if your goal is improve student learning, what helps young people learn better, learn more effectively? And that's where you start. And it's the debate about public, private, all of that stuff. Some things work very well in quote, private hands. Some things work very well in public hands. The question is, what's the most effective thing to give you improved student learning? And the second point, and again, this sort of box we get ourselves in, that, yes, we need qualified teachers and professional standards and all of those things, absolutely. But let's not shut out opportunities for people who might have unique experiences that they can also contribute to the learning and the education of our children in appropriate venues. So let's not get into this sort of either or, black, white. What works best for improved student learning? The other issue is that what does not work best for improved student learning, and the biggest threat, I think, to public education in this province is continued disputes between unions and school boards, unions and the provincial government. It has gone on for years.
This is the new normal.
It's the new normal, and it is desperately disruptive and destructive. And if there's one thing, you can't say to a parent, we're going to take your tax dollars and pay for the school down the street. And if the school down the street is not doing the job for that parent, for that child, you can't say, tough, you're out of luck. Because that's not a sustainable position. And this continued turmoil and fighting, and I think, with all due respect to Anne, and I'm making a generalization, it has a lot to do with teacher union leadership, because you've seen them fight with Wynne, you've seen them fight with McGuinty, you've seen them fight with Harris, Eves, Bob Ray, Bill Davis. I mean, it's a never-ending story.
Don't forget David Peterson.
David Peterson. So we've got to, collectively figure out how we stop that, or we're going to lose our public education system.
And think about this for a second while I go to Marit and ask you, who sort of is a trustee stuck in the middle between parents and teachers, is there a better way?
To negotiate, to deal with that relationship?
At the moment, we're in a new normal where the government and the teacher unions are just not getting along year after year after year, and we know who gets hurt at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, this new way that they're conducting the negotiations is very centralized. I think that we'll see how that has played out. But look, yeah, it's a political issue, right? There's an election underway, a federal election, and there's no question in my mind that the provincial Liberal government wanted to tidy all that up before we headed back to school. It's political. Nobody wants that. The provincial government wears it. School boards have to deal with that. I would say that, generally speaking, I think that we provide great quality education in our schools in Canada, in Ontario. We provide kids with excellent education.
And you educate 95% of Ontario children?
I think we do.
Between the publicly funded
fourth largest
Catholic,
school board in
secular.
North America, right? Okay. Massive. Do we always do it the best way possible? I'm not sure. There are always going to be issues. But the folks at the front line, and this is where I am sympathetic to the teachers' needs. We have teachers with masses of experience. We have to have more professional development. For those teachers, we have to have opportunities for them to be supported in innovating in our classrooms. But we do have this hot potato. Teachers are a very, very powerful group in our province. There are many teachers. They can speak out. They have the right to do so. And I unfortunately do find that in our schools, sometimes it's the kids that become the kind of political baseball and
football.
All of that. Football, yes, thank you. I'm thinking Jays.
Given how well the Jays are doing, I was just going to say, baseball makes sense. It feels like, I'm sure this isn't true, but it feels like the only time we read about education in the papers or hear about it on television these days is because you or Sam Hammond or somebody from OSSTF is having a fight with Liz Sandals. Does it have to be that way?
I don't think so. And we actually, because we've got this huge issue, and respectfully, we fought with everybody. The reality is we've always also got on with everybody. I'm going to go to the fact that there isn't a single government that hasn't decided that they need to change education in the system. And who do they expect to do it? The teachers. Mm-hmm. Do they ask the teachers? Are the teachers ever involved in that discussion?
Yes, very much so.
In many instances. However, that's at the ministry level. When it gets down past the board to the principal, to the teacher in the classroom, that's where the discussion gets broken apart. So we started on this particular go-round this time, and I will refer to the new bill. It does have its issues. As an association, we're committed right now, we've already passed, that we're going to review our practices as we went through this. But the reality is, each subsequent government that has made the changes, the teachers have ended up being the ones that have had to do it. We decided that we would go out to the public and explain to the public it's not always about the money. That's why we started the website, teachersmatters.ca, and we started putting out some of the issues that are of concern to us. At the bottom end of we're the ones in the classroom with the students. They're not numbers to us. They're individual human beings. Every single one of them has their own needs, their own wants. Our responsibility every single day is to go in and do the best we can for that child.
We understand that, but we also, and I'm just going by what a lot of other people have told me, which is they think you're more interested in keeping your numbers of teachers employed versus the quality of education in the classroom. That's what I hear. Is that not the case?
Well, the reality is, obviously, as a teachers' union and at their leadership, under the Ontario Labour Relations Act, my duty is duty of fair representation. So is that one of my jobs? Absolutely.
But that's the point. Parents don't care about how many teachers there are hired in this province. They care about whether Johnny or Janie's getting a good education.
But do they care about class size?
They do.
That's directly related to the number of teachers.
Is that a fair point, Janet?
Well, again, what is it you're trying to achieve? Improved student outcome is not necessarily driven by class size. What is important for, I mean, it doesn't mean it's not an irrelevant point, but if you're looking at what drives student learning, it's good quality curriculum, it's well-trained teachers, it's face time between your students and your teachers, and it's parental involvement. And a lot of that can drive a better student outcome than, again, getting too driven by class size. It is important. I'm not saying it's an irrelevant point.
That's all true.
But,
I know Michael Fullen, Dalton McGinty's education czar from Oise's been on this program. He says the whole issue of class size is overrated. However, I'm going to ask Chloe, what would you rather have, a class of 35 kids or 25 kids?
Honestly, 25. And
of course.
With all due respect, I'd have to kind of disagree with what you're saying, because having quality face time and having a good curriculum, you can't implement that if you have a class of 35 kids. You won't get that one-on-one face time that you need because the time is going to be limited. If you have 10 kids who all have questions, by the time I know, especially in high school, by the time the teacher is done teaching what she needs to teach, and there's a line of 10 kids who have questions, the bell's already rung and it's time to move on to the next class.
But you know, for years there have been classes of 35 kids. And would you be happier in a 25? Would the teacher be happier with a 25? Absolutely. They'd be happier if it was 5. I mean, think of how wonderful a class would be with 5. But there's also a reality that you can't ignore in terms of how you deliver education. You're always going to have tension over your class size. So you need to kind of figure out where you want to peg it, what's the best you can do, and then let's move on to talking about some of the other issues that can drive student learning more effectively.
Go ahead,
Can I
Anne.
ask for a little bit of clarification? Yeah. So you're talking about student outcomes. And I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Do you mean pass rates? Do you mean numerical, statistical data?
Well,
or do you mean that in a class of, a variety of number, I think is important.
Yeah, it is important. I'm not saying it's not important.
I'm going to go to the fact that you said for years there's been this. Curriculum has changed drastically over the years.
Right.
So there's an awful lot more has to be delivered. Yeah. Curriculum is constantly being revised, and it's a constant learning process and changes. And sometimes that doesn't keep up with the tools and the things that are required to help the student and to help the teacher. But the bottom line is, this is not about just giving a numerical pass and getting students through. The education system is much. That's why.
Who said it was?
That's why I'm clarifying.
It's about.
Okay.
I mean, when
that's critical, right? Because
absolutely,
we really
it's critical.
We may be talking about a very different concept of what a successful outcome is.
Well, no, there
Can I just
are
finish?
range.
My outcome is students, however many are in that classroom, whether it's elementary and little kindergarten kids or whether it's the grade 12, who come out having had the best experience that they could possibly have, that have moved from where they came in on any given subject to where they go out to the best of their ability, but also that they've been enriched as a citizen of this country. And I have to say, the publicly funded, publicly delivered, by Ontario qualified teachers is absolutely critical. And I would stand against the fact of privatization of any of this and bringing in people
Another thing we have not really talked about here, we talked about teachers, thank you, and very, very important, and parents and students. But there's also this other group of workers in our school system that we have seen cut back dramatically. Guidance counselors, social workers. And I'll tell you, as a trustee, the issues that families raise with me, the concerns that when they eventually come to their trustee with, are often related to that lack of support in our schools. And I mean, in terms of outcomes, kids coming out of school with healthy lives, having not being bullied, having dealt with whatever anxiety issues they've had, and dealing with transitions in a successful way. Like, this is really important, and we have seen this chipped away at dramatically. I think now when I meet social workers in our school system, they are exhausted. They are racing between schools, trying to keep up, and there are so many kids who need that kind of support, and we're just not giving it to them.
How do we, Doretta, reorient the priorities of the education system so that it's not always about whether the teachers' union has got its contract signed? Not that that's not important, but that we take a minute for the librarian, for the guidance counselor, for the phys ed, which is not adequately taught, for music, which has disappeared from public school education virtually. How do we deal with that?
Well, sometimes it means rethinking how, like I said, how you deliver education.
Can we do that?
Well, I think you can. It's been done in lots of different places. It's not about privatization, because if you wanted to get rid of privatization, then you better make every tutoring center illegal in Ontario, because they're picking up the slack in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. It isn't just thinking about teachers, because everyone loves their classroom teacher. I respect teachers. I have a family full of teachers. I had wonderful teachers myself. They are probably the least powerful people in the whole system, the classroom teacher. Their unions are very powerful, and I'm trying to...
there is a distinction.
You have to,
Yeah.
there is a
And
distinction between the two, because the individual teacher has very little power. Yes, you're right, they don't, it's about training, it's about how all these things get implemented. And there's always going to be changes, and newsflash, technology changes, subject matter changes, curriculum will always change, has always changed, and it always will. And technology changes and always will. These things, you'll have new challenges with students. Back in my day, it was immigration. We had tons. There were 48 kids in my grade 4 class, and somehow we all met.
Are you kidding?
I'm
Only
not
one
kidding.
class?
I am not kidding.
48?
48.
Huh.
In my grade 4 class.
Look at the progress we've made.
Yeah, there you go.
On that
And
note,
we learned.
on that note, thanks everybody for this discussion.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.